Good evening and welcome back to another episode of Red Wave USA. My name is Ross Raatz. We got a little bit of a different show for you tonight. We're going to go a little off the cuff a little bit tonight. Another slow week in the news, but we have something to celebrate. At least in my opinion, we have something to celebrate. This is the 10th episode of Red Wave USA. We clap it up for ourselves, for all our subscribers and the likes that we get. Clap it up. We have made it to 10 episodes. I'll tell you what, this has gone further than I ever thought, in my opinion. I kind of thought that this would really die out, or my spark would kind of die out a little bit for all these kind of political shows. But you know what? We're still going strong. I love coming on here as much as I can to kind of report on the news and give our, conservative mind on it all, give a little conservative outlook on everything that's going on, right? So I am just overjoyed with my ability to be able to do all of this. We've gotten a lot better. I hope you guys have seen that the videos have gotten a little better in the editing process. I'm starting to kind of come into my own in that, right? And we're kind of really breaking some of these big topics down, we started a TikTok, right? That was something I have never done. This TikTok was huge. I remember back when I want to say a freshman in high school, if not a little before then, TikTok was called Musical.ly, right? And it was the same that it is now. It was a dancing app, right? And even then I thought it was a little funny, right? Like I wasn't going to touch that or do anything with that, and I never did. I made an account out of pressure from friends, I don't know, a couple years ago. I had it for like a day, never really touched it. We'll talk more about our 10th video and a little more celebration and look back on what we've done so far in the past few weeks of our episodes. We got a little bit to talk about today, but more of it's just going to be kind of a talk show. The news cycle right now is not the greatest, so we don't really have much to talk about. Main topics, we're going to dive a little more into the government shutdown, talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about the ceasefire that was broken. I believe it was either yesterday or 2 days ago now between Israel and Hamas. We'll talk a little bit about that, get into that. And we're going to talk about the whole EBT SNAP foods thing again. I know we talked about it last episode. I'm going to kind of go into it more. I posted a video on TikTok, right, about all this and the people crashing out over it, right? We'll get a little more into that and talk about that more. And lastly, we're going to talk about kind of the whole political ideologies that's going on in America right now. And we're going to just kind of do a brief overview of everything that's going wrong right now. So we'll get more into that. Thank you for joining us for the 10th episode of Red Wave USA. I'm so excited. I couldn't be more thrilled to be with you on this wonderful 10th episode. So thank you for supporting Red Wave USA. Thursday, October 30th. We are 1 day away from Halloween. I'll say it now because I don't know if we'll have an episode tomorrow, Friday, or not, because it is Halloween. Might have some plans with family, things like that. So I don't know if I'll be able to get a video up on Halloween. So we're just going to celebrate it now. Along with it being our 10th episode, we're also going to celebrate Halloween a little bit. I don't really have anything planned, but I want to talk a little bit about everything that we've been through. This show kind of started up in the midst of this government shutdown. I think I started this whole thing maybe a week or two before the government shutdown happened, and there was talks about it, but we really didn't think it was going to happen. And now literally the entirety of my show pretty much has been during the government shutdown. So that's kind of been encompassing our entire show. It seems that we have to talk about it every episode because that's kind of the main news cycle. So yeah, we've been dealing with this government shutdown, and as I just said, it's been a majority of our show. And I know there can be a lot of fatigue that comes from that, hearing about it 24/7, but you want to blame anybody, you know who to blame. You know who we're going to put the blame on in this show, because that's where it should be, and that's the Democrats. We're still sitting here. I think it's day 29 now. You know, you look up on the, go look at the White House website. Trump's got that clock front and center, you know, by hour, second, and day. 29 days we're into this, reaching the 30th day tomorrow on Halloween. So that should be interesting. What's also going to be interesting is this Saturday, right? The whole EBT and SNAP Foods thing, that's going to be cut. So this whole weekend is going to be a little interesting. We're going to be treading through new waters. We got Halloween, and then we got EBT being cut on that Saturday, right? But we'll get into that later. I just kind of more wanted to talk about the 10 episodes that we've been through and what all that's came with that. I couldn't be more happy with how we're progressing. You know, I still understand that we're a super small show, and that's fine. You know, starting with a small audience, a small dedicated audience, right? We still get the views on the videos, and like I said, I couldn't be more happy with how we're doing and how we're progressing. You know, it seems that ever since Charlie Kirk, if you really want to put it there, this whole conservative movement has just been a giant uproar. Conservatives are finally coming out of their shells. And I know right now, you look at the Conservative Party, there's just a lot that's going on. It almost seems like there's a lot of division right now in the Conservative Party. You have the MAGA Republicans who are very supportive of everything that Trump does, which I would put myself partially in that boat. And then you have, right now, you know, Nick Fuentes is a huge guy right now. As much as people don't like him and the way that he does things, I know he says a lot of crazy stuff, right? Which it is what it is, but he's becoming huge. He just did a show with Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson's huge, and their whole outlook is very America first, right? Which I align with as well. You know, very critical of Israel and what we're doing on that front, and very critical on foreign policy. And I guess I could put myself in that boat a little bit too. You know, questions need to be asked. That's what politics is. We're here to ask questions. We're here to debate. That's the whole idea of politics. That's how politics runs, you know? So we got these two boats, and then you have the on the fence Republicans who right now probably aren't saying much with the government shutdown and all the protests going on. Probably don't want to show themselves as a conservative, which is all right. You know, we'll still get that vote come November. We've also covered a lot on those exact protests, the No Kings. We've covered the ICE protests and everything that's going on there. And I know on my TikTok, at least, I get all these comments that, oh, they're not violent, and you know, just crazy criticism from the left, which is fine. I'm all here for it. You know, I get a lot of the comments. I just showed my last video. It was, wow, you got more comments than likes. That seems to be the case for you. And I'm like, that's fine. I'm totally fine with that. I would like people to comment on the YouTube videos. I will respond as quickly as I can, or if I can get to your comment, I will, you know what I mean, and respond to you. That's what I love about politics. That's why I sit here and do this. That's why I post this on TikTok and YouTube and do the shorts and everything. That's why I do it. I want to have these discussions. That's the whole point, you know. That's what America is for. We're here to debate, right? That's why do you think we hold presidential debates every cycle, you know? The whole point is to see the world from a multitude of views, whether that just be a conservative view or it be a liberal view. You know, we're here to debate on these topics. It's the whole point. But you know, we've covered a lot of controversial topics, the whole violence thing from the left and Charlie Kirk and all of that stuff. And we've really kind of been through a lot. You know, I know it feels like we just started the show, which we did. We're, 2 months into this, really? But we've encompassed a lot of politics. And I love it. I do. I couldn't be more thrilled to come here and have a little celebration of sorts, right? A little celebratory 10th episode. You know, I didn't really think that this would go this far, but here we are, and we're growing. That's the biggest thing. We're getting views on TikTok. I know one of them has eclipsed 2,600 views, you know, so we're on the come up, that's the whole point. And I think where some of my message gets lost in is when I talk about views and subscribers, likes, things like that. At the end of the day, that's not what it's about. One of the comments was on my TikTok was, bro, you're not even getting paid. Why do you care? Or something along those lines. And, I care because I'm passionate about politics. That's the whole reason that I sit here and take time out of my day to sit here and talk, to edit, to split it up into clips and post it to TikTok. That's the whole point. Because I like doing this. I'm passionate about politics. I care about my country. So that's where that comes from, at least. You wonder why I sit here and do this for free. It's because I enjoy it. And maybe we get to a point where I can put more into it, right? When we're getting financially benefited from it. I know that's a long ways down the road, but I put more into the set, and maybe the 10th episode celebration would have been something, a little bigger, but that's besides the point. I'm just saying I care deeply about this stuff, and that's why I sit here and talk about it. That's why I take time out of my day to do it. That's the whole point. But anyways, I just wanted to kind of do a little look back on everything that we've done, everything that we've been through here at Red Wave USA. I couldn't be more happy with how things are going and how we're progressing. So just kind of wanted to do a little synopsis of all that stuff. So let's get into a little bit of news, shall we? Government shutdown. Here I am coming to you talking about the government shutdown once again, right? Because that's what's on the plate right now. We're still dealing with these, 43 some Democrats that are in this little band together that they're going to keep the government shut down. And I see liberals comment all the time that, liberals are still working. They're still in the office. Doing what? What are they doing? Saying they're twiddling their thumbs while they're holding our government hostage? How you can push that point that, Democratic legislators are still working, right? We're still in the office, still working. Okay, so are Republicans, but there's nothing to work on. We're trying to negotiate with you. Let's get this funding bill passed so we can actually negotiate, right? Let's open up these negotiations, right? Let's open these things up by passing the funding bill. That would be step number one. So if there's anything you want to start working on, Democrats, let's start working on getting this funding bill passed. Volunteer as tribute 7 of your Democratic legislators to pass this thing. Go to your 43 Democratic legislators that don't want to pass this and say, hey, we need 7 of you. You might look bad from a liberal sense, but we need this passed, and then we can start negotiating on what we want instead of crying wolf and holding our government hostage in order to pass legislation through a funding bill. And I know I talked about this a lot last episode, but it's the same exact thing. And you want to hear my kind of whole synopsis on this? What's being pushed forward by Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries is that this is to pass the whole medical subsidies thing, $200 billion medical subsidies, ACA credits, whole deal that I won't get into. But this isn't, I really don't think that that's the biggest kind of issue that's preventing Democrats from, performing bipartisanship and coming together to pass a funding bill. This has to do with Trump. It comes back to it. It has to do with this right here. That's at the end of the day, that's what it comes to in my mind, right? They want to make Trump look as bad as possible. And the longer that this government is shut down, the worse he looks, in their opinion. Obviously, we conservatives know that that's not the case, and we're sitting here waiting for Democrats to want to start up the government again. You want to talk about this leverage, right? The Democrats keep bringing up the word leverage, that they have leverage right now with the government being shut down, and Republicans can't pass it because we need 60 votes, and we only have, 55, I believe. So we need 5-6 more of them to come through. So that's what they're calling their leverage, that they're able to shut the government down. And another big deal is that they're saying that, Republicans, you have Congress, you have majority in the House, you have majority in the Senate, and you have the executive with President Trump. You should be able to pass all the legislation you want. The only way that the liberals can put a stop to the Trump administration is through this government shutdown. We can't do anything. Legislation can't be passed. So in their minds, they think, okay, we're going to make Trump look really bad through all this by shutting the government down. Therefore, his administration can't do a damn thing. So you want to sit here and take this government hostage, not for your, okay, maybe a little bit for your health benefits, for your healthcare benefits, right? Maybe a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's just a strict hate for Trump. They don't like his administration. They don't like anybody in it, in the cabinet. It's just a strict stop to what Trump is trying to push forward. And you know for a fact, this is the next topic we'll get into, this government shutdown is going to be brought up, and it's going to be their main point in the 2028 presidential debates. You just watch. Take my word. Look back on it in 2028 when the debates are going on, whether that's J.D. Vance and Gavin Newsom, or if they decide to bring forth Kamala again, if they even have a primary, that is. You know this government shutdown is going to be the biggest topic of debate. They're going to push forward, oh, well, the Trump government, the Trump federal, can't push a government. They can't run a government, right? Because it just keeps getting shut down, and you weren't able to push any legislation anyway, so why should we vote for Republicans if they can't keep the government open? It's going to be the huge topic, because this is what liberals do. We saw this back in 2020. Do you remember this? Back in the 2020 election was COVID. COVID was the biggest topic, right? They're saying Trump mishandled COVID, and he was horrible for the safety of Americans on COVID. Didn't get a vaccine out quick enough. Wasn't strong enough on COVID policy. And their strong on COVID policy was shutting everybody in their own houses and putting mask mandates, right? But that's what they use. They find one thing throughout the 4 years, and they're going to push that. And they're going to push that hard throughout an election cycle. So I guarantee it, clock it right here, right now. The Democrats will use this government shutdown in their election process, use it to make them look good. If anything, though, if you do realize what's actually going on, you'll realize that we're being held hostage, yes, us, Americans, that count on our federal government to run, are being held hostage by the Democrats because they don't want to open this government. So just clock that, clip that, right? And remember that in 2028 when it's all going on, right? Again, they've done it before, like I said, in 2020 with COVID. Aside from the government shutdown, we have a breaking development in the Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal that Trump worked so hard to put together. It has now been broken, and by who, we don't really know. There's multiple reports coming out saying that Hamas fired upon Israeli soldiers, killing one. Therefore, that constituted Israel to carry out strikes all across Gaza. And then at the same time, Hamas was saying, well, we didn't do anything. We had no part in this, and Israel just decided to bomb us again, right? Killing close to 100. And as the longer that this pushes on, you sit and you wonder, when is the end? Where is the end? Because the light at the end of the tunnel, we saw it for a little bit with the peace deal, right? We saw it for a week, and apparently to keep that peace deal going, we had to have American representatives there every day of that week. We had Trump there to sign the deal and talk to the Knesset, right? When he went over there and talked to the Israel legislature. And we had J.D. Vance go visit. And we had multiple other U.S. elects go and visit Israel to kind of keep this in place, right? Kind of watching over little brother and little sister to see that they will stop fighting. But as soon as we leave, then all hell breaks loose and we're shooting each other and bombing each other again. So apparently what this is showing us is that we have to have a U.S. representative over there the entire time for this peace deal to even carry through. And I know in a previous episode we talked about Hamas, right? And the next step of this peace deal was disarming Hamas. Obviously that didn't happen. Hamas still has their weapons in full, it seems. And I knew that this would be the breaking point. I talked about it. Trump had came out and in an aggressive stance said that Hamas will be de-weaponized whether through force or through word. And obviously Hamas still has their weapons, and we're still in this same exact cycle. Anyways, I didn't want to go too deep into this whole Israel-Hamas peace deal thing. I don't really like talking foreign policy. It's not my strong suit. I am more America first, and I really like to focus on what's happening in our government, in our society, because what's going on in our society right now is not anything good. We're seeing problems every single day. We are the most divided we have ever been in the United States of America. And the problem is you get so far to the right, you get so far to the left, obviously that's going to create issues, that's going to create enemies. And again, this is the same reasoning I come to every single time. This comes from the top down. And I'll even go critical of Trump here. Trump comes out and says it very heavily on the Democrats a lot too, saying that whatever the words he brings, criticizing Democrats, and that pushes the conservatives far, far right. And then, terms like radical left, we'll use that one as an example, which there are a lot. And then you go to the left, right? And it's just all out anarchy when they don't get their way. And that, again, comes from the top down. As I said, the most notable I've seen is from the AOC. Chuck Schumer does it a lot too, Hakeem Jeffries. They all kind of play into this. Hell, Bernie Sanders says stuff like this a lot too. And what I'm speaking on is the fascist remarks, where Trump's a fascist and he's spreading fascism, and the whole conservative party is just a big fascism brigade, right? This is what causes your party to stray so far to one direction, But one thing I will say that I've seen is that I've seen a lot more moderate liberals, because a lot of my kind of arguments, are happening on TikTok, sadly, because that seems to be the liberal platform. But there have been a lot of civil liberals that are willing to have a discussion, even one saying, yeah, there is bad on both sides, right? And never would I have thought liberals would even bring up that discussion that anybody is bad on their side. They want to totally denounce the violent protest. They want to totally denounce all these fascist and Nazi remarks, right? You look on MSNBC, one of their reporters came on and said, oh, Kamala never called Trump a Nazi, right? And then right side immediately pulled the clip where she's talking about MAGA and how they're all Nazi. And that whole acronym, MAGA, has just completely destroyed the left. They hate MAGA. They can't stand it, I'll sit here. I think it's about time. We've done 10 episodes. We can celebrate a little bit. I can finally come here and put this on, right? We can celebrate a little bit, I got this hat for the 4th of July, and I was so excited to wear it, But anyways, we're dealing with this issue in America right now where we are so divided, and media is so polarized to the point where that's what you're getting fed all day, And I can't wait. I'm so excited for the TikTok comments on this one, and it's just going to be because of this right here. This hat causes so much issues on the left, it's not even funny. And that's all by one man, remember that. That's all by one ideology, one conservative ideology that Trump has pushed, But anyways, I'll sit here with this hat on and I'll critique Trump a little bit. Maybe that'll make the liberals happy, right? I'll sit here and critique Trump on America First. I know we've seen a lot of other Republican influencers or conservative influencers really comment on this too. America First has kind of been thrown on the back burner in the Trump administration. We are not focusing on pushing conservative policy through right now. And what I will blame that on, and I know I've talked about it before, is that we're cleaning up the mess that the Biden administration left us. We're still sitting here cleaning up whatever went on in that 2020 to 2024 period, mainly the immigration issue, the illegal immigration issue. We're still deporting people, right? We're still trying to limit these illegal border crossings every single day that reach record high numbers back in 2020 to 2024. under Biden. This is still a cleanup job, and I'll continue to put forward that message because that's what we're doing. If you really thought that major policy would be pushed through in the first, 8 months of a presidency, it's very tough to do when you're cleaning up after somebody's mess, And it's also very tough to do when we're sitting in a Democratic government shutdown, when they're not even allowing us to pass any legislation. We're not even allowed to litigate new legislation on the floor, on the House floor, on the Senate floor. We can't do that because Democrats won't let us, and that's their strategy. That's the Democratic strategy. Prevent, pause, or cancel any possible way for the Trump administration to push through policy. That's the whole ideology of this, at least in my mind. This is my opinion. Again, let's remember you're watching my show. And I know that most of my viewers would relatively agree that this is a Democratic shutdown. Otherwise, you wouldn't be watching a guy with a MAGA hat on, right? But anyways, again, I don't understand, kind of a little bit of a tangent here. I go off on a lot of tangents. I don't understand how my content reaches to the Democratic side of TikTok. I don't get that. Because I guess I'm not very tech savvy or social media savvy. I'm trying to cut down on it. Really, the only reason I use it right now is for our show and promoting our show, promoting our conservative values. But anyways, it seems to reach, the Democratic side of TikTok, which seems to be a large majority. But anyways, we'll go more into, I want to talk a little bit about this. Bipartisanship, right? The theory of two sides working together to achieve a common good, right? Working as a whole. Bipartisanship is at an all-time low in this country, and it's really sad to see. We're not able to pass through legislation, especially right now with the shutdown, but we're not able to pass through legislation because of the polarization that both parties have come to. And yes, I will say, on the right as well, more so on the left in my opinion, but it's on both sides. We're so polarized to one side and to one movement that we can't pass legislation. It's a big problem right now, and these are all problems on American soil that we're dealing with, and I think that needs to be priority number one out of the Trump administration. I'd like to see more work go into the problems that are happening in our own country right now. I understand there are very large issues going on right now, whether that be Israel, Hamas, or that be Russia, Ukraine. I kind of wanted to do a little bit of a shorter show today with Halloween coming up, right? And a little more of a celebration, Happy 10th episode to everybody who watches, to all of our subscribers. I'm so happy to be here. I'm very happy I'm happy to wear the hat that's on my head right now, And I can't wait to post this to TikTok and have that MAGA hat all over their feeds, right? And again, I know I'm feeding into it and I'm rage baiting, if you will. But anyways, happy 10th episode to all you red wavers out there. Thank you so much for your support. I want to thank you for each view that we have, each subscriber that we have, the likes on other social media platforms like TikTok. I can't thank you enough. This has been a great joy for me to come here and talk. Just sit here and talk about politics, because that's why we're allowed to do this, because we live in the greatest country in the world, And people may link that, they may call me a fascist because I call the United States the greatest country in the world, right? No, I just have pride for my country. I'm a patriot, if you will. But anyways, thank you for tuning in to Red Wave USA. My name is Ross Raatz we're at Red Wave USA. I hope you have a great Halloween celebration, whatever you're doing, whether you're a little bit under my age now, age of 24. I'm not really going out to the bars and, participating in all that. Whether you're going out or whether you're staying in, watching a scary movie, having a cocktail maybe, handing out candy to the kids in the neighborhood. Enjoy your Halloween. I think this is going to be my Halloween costume. I might do the black suit instead. A little Trump Halloween, if you will. We'll see how many people actually like being handed candy by Trump, right? But I think that's what I'll do. But anyways, enjoy the holiday and continue to stay proud, conservatives. That's my biggest message. You guys all know that. Stay proud to be a conservative. Stay proud to, if you do, proud to wear this hat right here. And continue fighting for the conservative agenda, right? Civilly, of course. But anyways, thank you for tuning in, and good night.